Hey guys, so today I'm going to talk about how to survive your first TICU or SICU call shift. And this is specifically designed for surgical residents. So the TICU or the surgical ICU is a different place than your regular wards, especially if you are the on-call resident running the ICU for the day. It's a very different place in that there's a lot more urgency and thus autonomy because the timing for intervention is compacted. The pace forces a lot more independent decision making, and you will often have to act before backup is around or available. It's also an interesting place in that I found that your clinical knowledge translates almost one to one in terms of your ability to solve problems in the TICU or SICU. Every clinical problem that you encounter seems to have a toolbox of solutions that you can address it with, or a toolbox of therapies by which you can address it with. So, for example, if someone has a new effusion on the lung on the daily chest x ray, you have a set of solutions that you can address it with, whether it be by diuretics or, if appropriate, bronchoscopy. There's a discrete set of solutions available to you, a discrete toolbox, if you will. So I think before you enter the SICU or TICU, you want to really build your knowledge base so that you're agile in the ICU to address problems. And I think that these resources were particularly helpful. Um, I included the links below, but ICU Survival Guide was very quickly readable, very fast, very simple, very basic. Gave me a great overview of all the key problems that a surgical resident will encounter in the surgical ICU. It's a little simple, it doesn't have too many sources or anything like that, but to get a good grasp on the basics of everything, ICU Survival Guide is very quick to read. I always had a copy of with me on my early shifts in the ICU. The classic is Marino's ICU book. There's two versions. There's a more extensive blue version, and then there's a shorter, more compact, abbreviated little book version, which is in red. I've included the links to both below. Not all of it is fully up to date, but it offers great resources, gives you a lot of background reading, is a lot more comprehensive than ICU Survival Guide. It's a great place and reference to always have with you as well while you're running the ICU. Moving outside of these books, I think before you enter the ICU, you should really try to brush up on ICU fluids, pressors, and sedation. You should kind of already have on the back of your hand an idea of what fluids you're going to use and what situations. For example, you should know that you're not going to use lactated ringers for a traumatic brain injury patient. For pressors, you should know that you're going to use a certain pressor in certain situations. Oftentimes, levofed will be your first line option, particularly in sepsis. And then for sedation, you want to have a handful of options available to you at all times so that you can rapidly provide the nurses with what type of sedating agent you want when you get a new admission or when a patient is agitated, things like that. Also, I think very critical before you enter the ICU is to be very facile with ACLS and ATLS. You may not know when your first patient is going to crump on you, and all the nurses are going to turn to you to lead the code. So you should be comfortable leading the code, knowing what medicines you're going to use, figuring out how you're going to direct and manage the situation. It will solidify your reputation in the ICU at night as someone who can be relied upon or someone who doesn't really know what they're doing. So, really know that well. Be comfortable managing a code on your own. And then Demetriades' Atlas of Critical Care Procedures was pretty helpful. It encompasses a lot of invasive procedures that you might not be expected to actually do in the ICU, but it's a nice reference that provides written details on how to do various types of central lines, chest tubes, that you will be expected to do in the ICU. So it's a good reference to have if you'd like. And then, of course, Behind the Knife offers excellent videos on the basics to chest tube placement, pigtail placement, um, central line placement, all of which you will be using without a doubt in the ICU. So I came up with a set of strategies to try and mitigate the stress and pain that I felt in the ICU while being alone at night when on call. One thing I did was I rounded at midnight on every patient in the unit. You might consider doing it a little bit earlier or a little bit later, but at some point during your shift, you should be rounding on everyone. And this is your chance to talk to the nurse for every single patient, see what they've noticed, see any problems that they've encountered, try to get ahead of problems. Your goal is to try and keep the patients settled down for the night, doing well, not worsening, and looking pristine for the morning. So the nurses, when you round at night, will give you a clue as to any problems they've noticed or anything you can work on to get ahead of it. And if I had any doubts about a patient and the trajectory that they were going, I would get stat labs to try and get ahead of any sort of problem. Is their white count going up? Is their VBG worsening? Is their ABG worsening? How are their electrolytes? Is this tachyarrhythmia due to abnormal electrolyte pattern? Are their vent requirements going up? Get a chest x-ray. Are they a post-op abdominal surgery patient? Am I worried about abdominal compartment syndrome? Do I need to get um, a bladder pressure, an intra-abdominal bladder pressure? You need to take this time when you round at midnight to try and get your hands around any sort of problem that's starting to brew. Next, you want to do procedures, central lines, A lines to the best of your ability during the day when you have backup around, when you have other residents available to help you. When you're alone at night, everything gets a little bit harder in terms of if things get busy, you're going to have fewer hands to help you. You're going to have fewer sets of eyes to lay eyes on people. So try to get everything done during the day that you can. You're going to be busy as it is with new admissions at night. And then another key strategy I had is there's visiting hours in every ICU. Um, when the family comes by, it is absolutely essential that you make time to chat with them, answer any questions they have, update them, see if they have any concerns or questions. You want to really make them feel that everything possible is being done. No stone is being left unturned for their loved one. And then if you're worried about a patient when you're alone on call, get help early. You should have on a piece of paper, on your phone, or somewhere around you a list of all the critical numbers you need ahead of time. Who's on call? How do I get a hold of them? Who's on for nephrology? Who's on for cardiology? Anybody you think you might need when you're alone, you should know how to get a hold of them quickly, especially if someone's starting to get worse overnight. And you should know how to contact them ASAP. And then before the before the day team disperses, you want to make sure that they've teed away all their patients for the day. Because once you take on full responsibility of taking care of all the patients in the unit when you're alone, it's a lot of work. So you need to know that they've tucked the patients away. You need to ask them to take care of any loose ends before they leave for the day, within reason, so that when you take over to take call for the night, everyone's more or less tucked away. And then, as always, if you're on a 24-hour shift or you're on overnight call, these are brutal for your health, and your performance will sag as the hours go on and as you get more and more fatigued. So you really, really need to make a point of hydrating. It's non-negotiable. You need to stay hydrated. You should take cat naps whenever you can so you can be sharp, you can process information faster, and so that you can be presentable in morning rounds. Make sure you get some food while everyone is still there for the day. If it gets really busy at night and you're alone, you might not even have time for food. So try to get food when everyone's around, when there's extra hands on deck. And then you should have an energy drink or you should have a coffee thermos available with you. You should have filled it up at the start of the shift or before you came in. You should be ready to drink it whenever you need throughout the night. I've linked a thermos that I like because it includes stainless steel cups, so that you're not looking around for paper cups somewhere. when you need to pour yourself a cup. And then you also want to have a toothbrush, mouthwash, floss, because you're going to be updating families. You're going to be talking to the day team and giving them sign out when they come in. You don't want to look um, disheveled. You don't want to have bad breath. You don't want to be that one resident with dragon breath. You want to kind of show professionalism and be presentable. So make sure you take time. I usually did it after I rounded on all the patients at night. Just do a daily, nightly hygienic routine, and bring a change of clothes if you can, a change of scrubs, a change of socks. Be fresh, and then if you don't have time to get food, try to bring some Gatorade with you or some liquid IV. And then also make sure you have a utensil kit with travel fork, spoon, and knife in case you don't have access to a cafeteria at night. So I think early on in your SICU or TICU rotation, you should probably have these skills mastered. You might not have the privilege of mastering them before you hit the ICU, but pretty soon into your ICU rotation, you should have most of these down. So that includes central lines, whether it's in the IJ or in the femoral vein, or subclavian. You should be comfortable um, getting at it from different approaches, or you should, if it's a difficult one for you, you should know how to get in touch with your seniors at night to get assistance. It's not sufficient to be comfortable with placing it in the right IJ. Sometimes you won't have a good target on the right. You might need to go on the left, which has a little bit of a different trajectory. Um, it might be a cervical spine patient, and you might have to do a subclavian or femoral. So you need to know the different approaches. And this holds for cordis placement as well, for someone who's super unstable and needs blood, or for temporary dialysis lines, Schein placements. You should know how to do it and feel comfortable in a multitude of different locations. This also goes with A lines. Most of these patients who are on pressors will require A lines for close BP management. A lot of these neurosurgery patients will require A lines as well. You should be very comfortable placing them in different locations. Some of these patients will get very sick, and they might need chest tubes or pigtail places placed. So you should know how to do that on either side. And then sometimes the nurses will have trouble placing IVs, and they might ask you for help. And you can help them out by doing an ultrasound guided IV. It's an easy skill to learn. It's similar to central lines, and you can just help them out if they're having difficulties with access. You should also be comfortable with bronchoscopy, interpreting ROTEMs or tags for coagulopathic patients. You should have your own internal intubation and extubation criteria. For example, you should have a criteria in your mind when you look at a patient. Okay, I think this patient might need to be intubated soon. What is my threshold to intubate them? And then if there's a patient who's looking good, who's approaching extubation, you should have your own criteria of, okay, if they meet these criteria, I'm comfortable extubating them tonight, whether it be RISB criteria or what have you. And then another one is you should be very comfortable with tracheostomy management. Um, there have been lots of situations in the SICU where a tracheostomy gets dislodged and it's a fresh one, or there's concerns for a fistula, or it's a chronic tracheostomy that gets dislodged. You should know all these different permutations of what can go wrong and how to manage them. And then it's very important to remember the human side of the surgical ICU or trauma ICU. Um, at the end of the day, you are taking care of some of the sickest people in the city, or in the hospital. And families know, they can tell how serious the situation is, and they are scared beyond belief for their loved ones, or they're in severe grief. This is one of their most vulnerable moments as a family, seeing their loved ones like this. They can't control the situation at all. They don't know what to expect. They don't know what's coming next. So you always, always have to remember and make time for the family. Um, when the family comes in during visiting hours, I really urge you to take every chance you get to ask them if they have any questions. Answer every question you can for them. Give them some reassurance. Show them the humanity. Tell them what we're trying to do next. Really show them that you're leaving no stone unturned for this patient. No matter what the outcome, you want the family or the loved ones to come away with the understanding that your ICU is doing everything possible for their loved one. Because wouldn't you want that for your loved one? Just the same. Um, at the same time, you need to be honest and you need to be straightforward. Um, if the patient is super sick, I encourage you to be very direct about that. Um, Families need to know the gravity of the situation, and they need to understand what to expect because a lot of times the family is trying to prepare. Um, do we call family from out of state to come in? Do we call family from out of town to come in? How urgent is the situation? Do we need to make plans, getting affairs in order, things like that. So, I often would tell family members if it was valid, I would tell them that this patient is one of the sickest in the hospital right now or sickest in the ICU. I want to be very blunt to you. Um, so I encourage you to be honest and straightforward with the family. Um, and then, always approach the family with humility and be humble. Check your ego at the door. They're very vulnerable. They're very afraid. They are suffering. So approach them with humility and as a fellow human being. The bottom line is the trauma ICU or the surgical ICU is a very rewarding place to be in terms of patient care as a physician, as a surgical resident. But you need to know your resources. You need to be prepared. It's a place that rewards clinical preparation and clinical knowledge. The more you know, the more you can quickly help patients and act faster and be more proactive. Get help early if you see a patient tanking. Take care of yourself so you can be faster and on your feet. Show up ready, and I encourage you to take care of problems as soon as you notice something's going wrong. Get ahead of the problem. Don't let it balloon. Don't let it snowball into something you can't get your hands around. Good luck.